Senator Urquhart. Senator Sterle.
Madam Deputy President, I wish to make a contribution and comments to government response to the Rural, Regional Affairs and Transport References Committee report increasing use of so-called flags of convenient shipping in Australia. And on that, the government has finally come back with, let's just go with, let's say it's a response, okay? Now, I think it's very important. This inquiry had gone on for about 18 months, and it was a very interesting inquiry through the Rural, Regional Affairs and Transport References Committee, and Senator O'Sullivan and myself found ourselves on many meetings going through this important topic. And it started off where there was a Four Corners, I think it was, a couple of years ago now. But anyway, there was a report in the Four Corners, or one of those shows, where there was a ship, the Sagittarius, that infamous ship, was crewed by foreign workers. And may I say at the outset, so everyone's very clear, that at every stage of this inquiry, since before the whole lot, I have nothing against foreign workers, but I get pretty cranky when they're brought in, exploited, and they are replacing Australian jobs. I make no apology for that, never have, never will. Aussies must come first. Pretty simple. And I'd love to hear that side actually agree with me. They won't. They just all look down at their iPads or their iPhones and hope to Christ that no one was listening, and I won't single them out. But I won't single them out because they're all just as guilty as each other. So the Sagittarius, it had Captain Salas, the Filipino captain, notorious, admitted being a gun runner. On his watch, there were 2 deaths at sea on this ship, Filipino seafarers. Then there was 1 death back when it was unloading. The ship was unloading back in Japan. The owners of the ship had put a detective working under, what do you call it, cover? Yep, thanks. And somehow mysteriously, when the ship berthed, when it was unloading, unfortunately he was killed. Okay, so we're still waiting to find out what the heck's happened there. So anyway, that was the crux of it. So what we've gone here, and I'm just going to quickly go through, there's some significant recommendations, and I've spoken many, many times about this issue in many forums and many times in this place, so I won't go over much old ground. But the committee, this is a unanimous report, put out about, I think there was about 7 or 8 recommendations to the government, which we said this is what needs to be done. Because you must remember, back in 1992, there was also a similar inquiry into ships of shame. And I'm sad to inform the Senate and all those poor devils out there listening that nothing has changed. We have a government that is doing its best, and come charging down and attack me, every member of the coalition, if you think I'm lying. They are doing everything they can to see the demise of the Australian shipping industry. Said it many times. No one's ever yelled at me and said I'm making it up, because that's what they're darn well doing. And they can lie through their eye teeth about how good they are and how they're looking after Aussies and, what was the catch cry? Jobs and growth. As long as they're not Australian jobs and as long as it's not in the Australian shipping industry. Where the hell are all our seafarers going to come from? Our masters, our skippers, our captains? Where the heck are all our hard-working seafarers going to come from? I'll tell you where they're going to come from with this mob over here, the LNP over there, as long as they come from Libya or the Philippines or Iran or whatever it is. And unfortunately, that's where it's heading. And they're not alone. They've got partners in crime. And I'll tell you right now, you can put BP and Caltex in that. We used to have Australian seafarers on Australian ships plying their trade between our ports. Not anymore, people. It's all done by foreign seafarers, and this lot over there think it's great. Because this lot over there think they're doing a fantastic job, because they reckon, one of my recommendations, I want the committee, okay, but I chaired it. I want to share this with everyone listening. Recommendation 1, the committee recommends that the Fair Work Ombudsman implement a program of inspection for ships with foreign seafarers to verify that wages paid on board accord with Australian legal requirements. We're not making something up. This is what's supposed to happen. And what was the response from the government? But there was another recommendation I want to share too, and then I'll give you the response. The committee also recommended that the Australian government provide adequate funding for the Fair Work Ombudsman to implement an inspection program of ships with foreign crews to assess the payment of wages. Pretty simple, not hard at all. This was the government's response, everyone. The Australian government does not support these recommendations. But here's the rub. Here's the rub. Furthermore, the government considers that the current arrangements for compliance in the maritime sector are sufficient and the Fair Work Ombudsman is adequately funded to support these arrangements. Crap. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Geez, I tell you, it's really hard to control yourself when I start talking about the shipping industry being torn apart, Australian jobs being exported. Then they lie. Then they can't even tell the truth. And they expect us to believe that they're doing this? Well, let me just give you a couple of classic examples here. December last year, there was a ship called it's a Bahamas-registered vessel, the Diana, pulled up in Melbourne. The ITF did what they normally do, got on board. Lo and behold, they found out that this Australian company owns the Diana. Canadian Shipping Lines Australia, CSL, yeah, what a great company they are, and I really have got my tongue firmly planted in my cheek. In fact, when I pull my tongue out, they're far from a decent Australian company because they are absolutely guilty of underpayment of wages. The ITF found out. The ITF was prosecuting them, and this is an Australian company that's replaced Australian seafarers with foreign seafarers and foreign ships. And they're getting ably assisted by that lot over there. In fact, CSL Australia also have vessels Acacia, Adelaide, I think it is, and the Diana. And you know what? What a great Australian company they are, CSL, because they're even refusing to sign industrial agreements so their workers can be paid Australian wages and conditions. So, government, there's one of your mates that's out there rorting it, got caught out. Here's another one. Okay, this is why they're telling us that Fair Work Ombudsman's funded well and they're doing a great job. They're not. This goes back to April last year. This is right in the heart of the inquiry. So the ITF, International Transport Federation, lassoed this Aussie charterers. Now, I'll tell you what it is here. There's a Norwegian shipping company allegedly paying, not allegedly, in the end that's what they did, paying their foreign crew a pitiful, ready for this, $1.25 an hour while working in Australian waters. And this mob of jokers over there are trying to tell this committee who worked their backside off talking to the industry about the deficiencies. That's not new, been around since many, many years. Rehashed 1992 ships of shame, nothing to see. Typical of LNP ministers. Tuck it under the desk, and hopefully no one will talk about it. Well, we're going to keep talking about it. So let's have a look what they did while they were ripping off these foreign workers in Australian waters. Now, they launched the action against a mob called Transpetrol TM, claiming it underpaid no less than 61 foreign crew members, here we go, a total of $255,000 when they worked on the oil tanker MT Terminal in Australian waters between 2013 and 2015, and that is carting BP and Caltex's products around because BP and Caltex, yes, that's the fuel mobs that can't wait to rip into Australian motorists at every opportunity. Talk about cartels. They replaced Australian manned ships, as I'd said earlier. This one was done with the chartered Norwegian-owned ship. I've got to tell you, Madam Deputy President, that it just irks me, and these are only a couple of examples. And I can go through all these recommendations, and lo and behold, the government doesn't accept any of them. They try to rub a little bit of salt in the wound by telling me when we go further about making sure that we are environmentally and industrially that everything's Mickey Mouse. It's not Mickey Mouse. Talk about that too. Here's another one. There was only one here recently I saw a couple of weeks ago. 80-odd containers fell off a what did I do with that? Hang on, it's around here somewhere. Fell off a ship coming into Sydney. It was a Liberian registered ship. Okay, so what? I'll tell you so what. There was heavy seas, yes, we know these sort of things happened. They fell off at 11 o'clock at night. They fell off before midnight the night before, but it was 11 o'clock the next morning before AMSA, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, was even notified. And I could tell you now, there's no way known Australian crewed or Australian-owned ship or Australian seafarers and Australian captain on it would have waited 11, 12 hours before they thought they might decide to let the AMSA know. So I'm saying that. I'll have a lot more to say about this. I will seek leave to continue my remarks I'm not going away. This is an absolute disgrace in our nation that the LNP government under Mr Turnbull and previously Mr Abbott cannot wait to wave goodbye to the Australian shipping industry, Australian seafarers, Australian ships. And I've got to tell you, the Americans have the Jones Act. And it's about darn time that we had to act the same. I don't care what name you call it. It's about time that we started building Australian ships, Australian-owned, Australian-built, Australian-crewed, Australian seafarers, Australian skippers, the whole lot. Got a lot more to say, Madam Deputy President.
Thank you, Senator